Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Blue Baby. So finally a run that's going to the Dark Room, and I was kinda excited about this one because it feels like we had a lot of special runs, or maybe a lot of mediocre runs that didn't really go to the end, but in this particular one I just felt like it's time for a solid run that has a very concrete ending that we can get to and kinda do our best. And I feel like this was supposed to be it, but it just didn't feel that satisfying, and I want to explore the reason as to why that is. And I feel like a lot of the part when people say, well, this run wasn't that good, or maybe this run was bad, just comes due to the fact that maybe people didn't like the items that they got, or maybe didn't like the room permutations. Like, if you have a run that's maybe super strong, but you're forced to maybe fight the Mask of Infamy, and that fight takes you like 3 minutes on average on every single instance, then maybe that run doesn't feel satisfying, doesn't feel good, because you feel like even though you were super strong, or maybe you had a lot of good items, it didn't really affect much, and it didn't really do anything. And of course, I'm just saying these very obvious things, but what I'm trying to point this out is because this kind of loops back to why this run didn't feel satisfying, and I feel like it's mainly due to the character we're playing as. And of course, Blue Baby, I think, is a very unsatisfying character, as maybe some others, like the Lost and the Keeper. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that difficult characters are unsatisfying, it's just maybe more due to how the game mechanics work. And I think the biggest part here is kind of looking at how these characters are structured, or maybe in this case Blue Baby. So as Blue Baby, of course, you have your spirit hearts, and they're very precious. Basically, every time you get hit, you can't get that heart back, so it kind of gives you that instilled notion that you can't get hit. Of course, if you get hit, you need a way to kind of recuperate it, but getting hit generally feels much worse on Blue Baby as opposed to any other character, just because of that consequence of not being able to regenerate your health. And of course, I would say that that's a good thing in most cases, but it's not a good thing when you get an item like Placenta, or maybe even Old Bandage, because both of these items, while they're good in the average case scenario, I would be excited to get them, because they're not just an HP upgrade, they also have some effect associated with them. So for example, with Old Bandage, every time you get hit, there's a chance for you to get a red health, or with Placenta, there's just an inherent chance over time that you're gonna get some red health back. But as Blue Baby, not only do you not get the benefits of these effects, which are usually, I would say, quite unique and novel, but also you don't get the HP upgrade part of it. You do get one Spirit Heart, but looking back on it, with a red heart, you can essentially take a devil deal, even the one for 2 hearts. So we can say that one red health container, in the average case, is worth 1 devil deal. But as with Blue Baby, of course, every devil deal is 3 spirit hearts, and you only get 1, which means that every HP upgrade is worth significantly less than what you would be used to with any other character. So getting 3 HP upgrades in a row, inconsequentially, after every single boss fight, I feel like really puts a very sour taste in your mouth, and not even in the sense that maybe it's not a good thing, because getting Spirit Hearts is good. I'm not opposed to getting Spirit Hearts from the HP upgrades, but when you get 3 of them in a row and you really can't utilize them by going to Devil Deal and picking it up, it just feels like you're getting nothing. And of course, I feel like in a lot of cases, people would be even opposed to that, because getting something would feel better than getting nothing. And in this case, you get an item which doesn't even necessarily do anything. So it's like, do you have to rub it in my face? You know, I think it would be even better if you just didn't give me an item at all, as opposed to give me this HP upgrade, which is supposed to be inconsequential, and which it was, of course. I mean, it does give you HP, which you can use to kind of get hit against enemies and gives you more protection, but you're playing a daily run, and if you're kind of adept at the game, you're not expecting to get hit. So getting HP doesn't really feel all that satisfying, and this is like the big theme that I'm kind of going at here, that this run ultimately wasn't satisfying. But was it a strong run? I would say it was a strong run, because there were a lot of things that kind of went right. We got a lot of trinkets, some of the items which worked well together, and I feel like just that synergy-wise, or at least what I'm looking in an Isaac run, this run had it, because there were a lot of different combination of items which kind of maybe work together in a way you wouldn't expect them. I was actually a lot stronger than I maybe initially felt, but overall it still felt very unsatisfying, and I think the biggest part of that is just how the first 3 or 4 floors went. Of course, we got all of those HP upgrades. We really couldn't do anything with them, so that felt pretty bad. And of course, we got the Backstabber, which is an item which in theory seems like it would be a fun item, but it just doesn't do anything. So it feels like, again, you're not getting anything for the asking admission price for going to that treasure room and using up your key. And we didn't get anything, basically, or it's not anything substantial. So later on, of course, when you enter the 3rd floor, you're left with base damage and base DPS, so you're not in a position where you can kill enemies very fast. And of course, then you get the Dank Depths, and the Dank Depths already are a floor which has a lot of enemies with a lot of HP, and which spawn a lot more enemies with even more HP, of course. So going in there with a position where you don't have a lot of damage or tears just makes you feel like you're not strong enough. Maybe like the run kind of gimped you over in some sense, and that you're just left in a position where you kind of have to care for yourself. Suddenly it doesn't become a run where you're enjoying it, suddenly it becomes a run for survival. Even if you have a lot of HP, that sometimes makes it even a bit more frustrating, because you don't have that sense of urgency. I feel like sometimes whenever I'm playing a daily run, or just an Isaac run in general, but in dailies it's more prominent because I'm kind of worried about dying early on, is if I have a low amount of HP, I try to play much more serious, and I just enjoy the experience a little bit more, because there's always that anxiety. If I get hit only one more time, I'm gonna lose the run, and I can't afford that. But if I have something like 12 HP, if I get hit, I'm not that worried, because I still have 11 more HP, there's nothing to be worried about. So even in that sense, I guess the run kind of feels a little bit boring, or at least there's nothing at stake here. And I think combined with all of those things which I just mentioned before, is the reason why this run felt ultimately unsatisfying. And of course, I'm not trying to say that maybe we should change this, or maybe that the run shouldn't be like this. I'm just kind of trying to point out or reason, or at least try to find out why I think a lot of people didn't like this run, even though, like I said, at least in my case, it was actually pretty decent. So if you look at maybe the stats and the items that we got a lot of very interesting items in my opinion. So we have the light bulb, which gives you some stat upgrades whenever you have a full charge. We have Krampus's head, which I feel like is a bit of a strategic item to use, just due to the fact that it's a 6-room charge item, and you have to use it in a room where it will deal the most damage. So just from that sense, it's a bit strategic. And of course, because of the light bulb, now suddenly you kind of have to, or want to, keep it charged up for the easier rooms. But if there's anything where you would benefit from using it, then of course you want to use it. So it does give that little bit of a layer of complexity on top of using this item. So I feel like that already makes it for a pretty interesting run, at least more interesting than the average case scenario. But also, when we look at the items or the damage upgrades that we've got, it's not that bad, because we got Cricket's Body, which I feel like already is an item that usually is connotated with fun synergies and just fun tear effects, because it splits your tear into 4 tears. And then of course, if we have any stat altering effects, like in this case we have Pinky Eye, which gives us poison tears, but we also have Head of the Keeper, which gives us coin tears. So having more tears at once is also very beneficial, because now we're not only generating coins, which means we're generating points, but there's just a higher chance of enemies getting poisoned or get hit by poison tears, getting poisoned, and that just adds a little bit of DPS on top of that. We also got the Blood Clot, and we also got the Chemical Peel, and those are both effects which affect your tears every second time. So that means they increase damage of every second tear that you get. And I think that with the way it works, every time a tear splits into more tears, it also works very well, because the tear that will be spawned from that split tear is determined randomly. So it can either have a damage upgrade or not. So I feel like because of that, or at least with how variety works, or chance, variance, not variety, you're gonna get 2 shots that are gonna have increased damage. So it's not that bad, because you can see that these items are synergizing pretty well together. But in the end, it's not about maybe just how much damage you are, or just what your stats are. This is something I talked about yesterday, but it's just how strong the run is. And I feel like if you look at the run and you look maybe what's going on the screen, I'm pretty much tearing enemies apart. I come into a room and I kill them before they even have a chance to attack. Obviously not with every single enemy, but with the majority of bosses, I feel actually very decent, in a very good position to kind of deal with those enemies at once. And of course, I think the biggest part of this also comes from the black rune that I found at some point. And I felt like in the majority of cases, a black rune isn't that influential. Obviously, it's good if you can suck up like 3 items or more, because then you're kind of guaranteed to get one of the significant damage upgrades or DPS upgrades, so tears either, or damage, or even luck or whatever. But in this particular case, I just got a black rune, and I felt like even getting a shot speed or a range upgrade might be good, because we have the Cricket's Body, and obviously the secondary tears are greatly affected with the shot speed that you have and your effective range. So getting any of those 4 stats would be good. So what I did is I went to the shop, I bought a few items, and then of course I blank runed them. And what I got is a 0.5 shot speed upgrade, which would usually be pretty bad, but in this case it actually turned out to be pretty good. And also got a tier downgrade, or upgrade. We went from 10, or like from 8 to 5, which also greatly affected how fast we're shooting, and because of the formation synergies, it actually kind of panned out to be a really strong run in the end. So you can see that we finished in the 89th place, and obviously a lot of that was due to the fact that I didn't get to Hush, I didn't get to Boss Rush. I got hit quite a lot, because generally of the high shot speed, you're kind of knocking enemies around and they can run into you, especially the leeches or enemies which are affected by knockback. But overall, I feel like it was a strong run. We kind of held our own. You can see our health wasn't really in a problematic situation, situation at the end, so I felt like or at least we were pretty safe. So overall it was an enjoyable run that was kinda tainted by the first 3 or 4 floors, and because of that I feel like that's the reason why a lot of people thought maybe this was a bit of a bad run in the end. But I'm glad that we can explore that to some extent, that I was kinda able to point out as to why I think the run was bad, or at least why the run felt unsatisfying, because I think it's always a good idea to reflect. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.